My son's girlfriend pretended to love him, but all she really wanted was our family's business and property. My son was blind, head over heels, and wouldn't listen to me. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. Young love, the kind that makes everyone smile. But me? I saw the cracks. I saw the way her eyes lingered a little too long on the expensive car he drove, the way her smile widened whenever he talked about our family company, the way she'd slip questions about ownership and inheritance into conversations when she thought I wasn't paying attention. My son saw love. I saw calculation. And that's the thing about being a mother. You don't just watch, you feel. My gut screamed that something was wrong, but he was too blinded to hear it. Then one day, everything I feared became real. I got a call out of nowhere, a number I didn't recognize. On the other end was a man, her ex-boyfriend. His voice was tired, broken, and filled with the kind of bitterness you only hear from someone who's been burned badly. He told me she was a scammer, that she had ruined him, drained him, left him for nothing, and now she was setting her sights higher. He said I needed to wake up because my son was about to be her next victim. Hearing that made my stomach twist. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't just a mother being protective. It was confirmation that the woman sitting in my living room, smiling and calling me mom, was a fraud. She was playing us all. I told my son. I sat him down, looked him straight in the eyes, and told him everything. What I felt, what I feared, and even what her ex said. But do you know what he did? He brushed me off. He looked at me like I was the problem. He told me I didn't understand her, that I was being controlling, that I just didn't want him to be happy. And that cut deep. My own son choosing to trust her over me. That's when I knew words wouldn't save him. I couldn't argue with love. Love makes people blind, and he was blind as ever. But you know what can open eyes? Proof. Cold, hard evidence. So right then, I made a decision. I was going to collect everything I needed, every lie, every scheme, every dirty little secret she thought she could keep hidden. And when the time was right, I wasn't just going to tell my son. I was going to show him. I was going to show everyone. And the stage for that reveal, it wasn't going to be a quiet conversation. No, it was going to be the biggest day of her life. Her wedding day. After that call and the fight with my son, I didn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept picturing her smile, those fake sweet words she used to hook him deeper. I replayed my son's face too, the way he looked at me with disappointment, like I was some villain trying to ruin his happiness. Do you know how much that hurts? To raise a child, pour your whole life into him, and then watch him defend someone who's plotting against your family? It eats you alive. But I couldn't let the pain freeze me. I had to turn it into fuel. If she thought she was smart, I'd be smarter. If she thought she was ahead, I'd get 10 steps ahead. So I started small, watching, listening. Every word she said, every move she made, I treated like a puzzle piece. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was. I noticed she always asked about money, but never directly. It was sly. So, how's the company doing these days? Or, do you think your son will take over soon? Little questions, but always about ownership, about control. She'd smile when my son answered, but her eyes lit up like someone who just spotted treasure. That's when I started writing things down. Notes, dates, times, questions she asked, strange conversations. I built a record, piece by piece. But notes weren't enough. I needed real evidence. So I reached back out to her ex-boyfriend. At first, he didn't want to talk much, said he was done with her, didn't want to relive it. But when I told him what was at stake, when I said my son's entire future was on the line, he opened up. He sent me screenshots, old texts between them, messages where she bragged about using men, where she laughed at how easy it was to manipulate them, where she hinted that she'd never work a day in her life because men will pay for everything. Those texts hit me like a punch. It wasn't just greed, it was her whole mindset. She enjoyed it. She got a thrill out of destroying people. And now my son was her next target. Still, I knew screenshots from an ex wouldn't be enough. My son would just say, "He's bitter, he's lying." So I kept digging. I checked her social media, and sure enough, the mask slipped sometimes. Posts about expensive things, captions about leveling up in life, pictures with rich friends. Nothing too incriminating, but it painted a pattern.
Then came the breakthrough. I overheard her on the phone one night while she was visiting our house. She stepped outside, thinking nobody could hear, but I caught just enough. She was talking to someone about the deal, about locking this down before the wedding. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just planning, she was confident. She thought she had already won. That's when I bought a small recorder. Old-fashioned maybe, but effective. Every time she visited, every time she talked near me, I hit record. And slowly, little by little, I built a library of her own words. Words about how dumb men could be, how easy it was to get them to do what she wanted, how she was set for life once she married my son. I'd listen to those recordings at night, headphones in, tears in my eyes. Part of me wanted to run to my son and shove it in his face right then. But I knew if I showed him too early, he'd just defend her again. Love makes people blind, but humiliation, that makes them see clear as day. So I kept quiet. I kept building my case. Waiting. Planning. Because if she wanted a wedding, she was going to get one. But not the kind she dreamed of. Once the engagement was official, things moved fast. Too fast. She pushed my son into planning everything quickly, making it seem like she was just so in love that she couldn't wait to marry him. But I could see the truth. She was rushing before anything could go wrong, before I had a chance to change his mind. Suddenly, my house turned into wedding headquarters. She was there every day, flipping through magazines, scrolling on her phone, showing off rings and venues. My son? He was just grinning like a fool, nodding at everything she said, handing her the credit card whenever she wanted something. It was painful to watch, but I stayed quiet because while she was planning her big day, I was planning her downfall. I started gathering everything into one place. A folder on my computer, backed up to a USB drive, screenshots, voice recordings, social media posts, bank receipts I managed to get copies of. Everything. Piece by piece, her perfect bride image was turning into the monster I already knew she was. But it wasn't just about collecting evidence. I needed a stage. Something undeniable. Something that would break through the fog of love my son was trapped in. That's when the idea hit me. If she wanted to make her wedding a grand spectacle, then I'd use that stage against her. Why tell my son in private when I could expose her in front of every single person who mattered? Family, friends, business partners, neighbors, everyone. She wanted attention, she'd get it. Just not the kind she dreamed of. Still, I had to be careful. She wasn't stupid. She was watching me too, trying to charm me, trying to make me drop my guard. She'd call me Mom, ask me to help pick decorations, even hug me sometimes. And each time she touched me, I felt disgust crawl up my skin. I knew she was trying to keep me sweet, trying to stop me from digging. But the more she pretended, the harder I worked. And let me tell you, staying quiet wasn't easy. There were so many nights where I almost snapped, almost screamed at my son, "Open your eyes!" But I forced myself to wait. Patience was my weapon. Timing was everything.
I kept imagining the wedding day, her walking down the aisle, smiling like she'd already won, while I sat there holding the truth like a loaded gun. I pictured the screen lighting up, the whispers spreading through the crowd, her face crumbling as the lies poured out in front of everyone. That vision fueled me. That vision kept me strong. But in the weeks leading up to the wedding, things got harder. She started slipping into the role of wife already. She was cooking at my son's apartment, decorating his place, talking about how she'd help him manage the business. Each word was like a nail in the coffin. I couldn't help but think, if I failed, if I didn't pull this off, she would take everything. My son, my family's name, our future. And that's when I doubled down. I hired someone I trusted, a tech guy, to help me organize everything into a presentation. It wasn't just going to be random files. No, I wanted it clean, sharp, undeniable. Screenshots in order, audio clips timed perfectly, photos to back it up. A full story, beginning to end, showing exactly who she really was. Because on the wedding day, there would be no arguments, no excuses, no running away. Everyone would see her for what she was, and she'd have nowhere left to hide. The closer the wedding got, the tighter the air around me felt, like everyone else was walking around in sunshine, and I was the only one carrying thunder. I had the files, the recordings, the receipts, everything laid out and organized, but real life doesn't play out like a neat folder. Real life throws curveballs, and she started throwing them my way. She got nosy. She started asking too many questions about who's doing the slideshow and what songs were playing. Her smile got sharper, like she was testing the water to see if anything would float up. I felt her looking at me sometimes, like a hound, sniffing out where I'd buried a bone. There were moments I nearly lost it. One afternoon, she wandered into my study, just checking on some old family photos, she said, and for a second, I feared she'd see my laptop screen, the folder open, my evidence laid bare. I kept my face calm, kept my voice steady, and told her I was sorting through some old receipts for the caterer. She stayed a little too long, humming, pretending to be sweet, and then left. My heart didn't stop racing for an hour after that. That close call taught me two things. First, she was suspicious enough to snoop. Second, I'd have to be smarter. So I tightened up. I moved the USB with the presentation to a safe place. No one would think to look. Inside a locked recipe box in the kitchen, of all places. Ordinary, boring. Perfect. I only took it out to hand to the tech guy when the time came. The tech guy, bless him, was a young kid from the company my son used to work with, someone who owed me a favor. He was quiet, professional, and he understood the stakes without me spelling them out every 5 minutes. He formatted the clips, matched the timestamps, cleaned up the audio so her own words would hit like a hammer, and made some of the images larger, clearer, undeniable. He also promised to be at the venue an hour early to plug the USB into the main screen. I made him swear he wouldn't tell anyone, and he did. I needed people who wouldn't leak, people with loyalty, not gossip.
But the universe loves to test you. 2 days before the wedding, she started a rumor. Subtle, poisonous stuff whispered to my son's friends that I was overbearing and controlling, that I was trying to ruin their happiness because I couldn't accept my son was growing up. It worked. A few of the younger cousins started giving me sideways looks. My son called me that night, voice cold, asking me to stop making things harder. Do you know how that sounds when someone you raised is accusing you of sabotage? It cuts clean. For a moment, just a flicker, I almost thought maybe she was right. Maybe I was losing perspective. But then I'd listen to the recordings, to her laugh as she schemed about locking this down, and I'd remember why I couldn't back down. There were other close calls too. The caterer's assistant asked to see the slideshow one afternoon because she wanted to pick music that matched the photos. I had to think fast. I told her the slideshow was a surprise, that the groom had arranged it with his best man. She shrugged and left it at that. But the seed had been planted. Someone else might demand the files. Someone with less patience. At night, I'd wake up thinking about the USB sitting on my kitchen counter, about how one wrong hand could send everything spiraling. I started making contingency plans, copies on different drives, a secret email account with the files sent to it, hard copies of key text printed and hidden. Paranoia? Maybe. But when you're up against someone who will lie and charm and con your family out of everything, paranoia is just preparation, wearing sensible shoes. And then there was the rehearsal. The entire family gathered, everyone smiling, practicing walks and toasts. She flitted around, radiant, laying hands on my son like he was the last thing she'd been waiting for. I stood to the side, smiling like a statue, while inside I was a kettle about to whistle. On purpose, I volunteered to take the groom's mother to the venue for final checks. Anything to be closer to the tech people, anything to make sure the plan stayed tight. The venue manager was kind. We spoke privately about timing and how the screen would be cued after the speeches. He asked who would be operating it. I told him someone from the family. He nodded and shouldered the responsibility, and I felt the first true warm rush of relief. This could still work. But even with the venue tied down, the possibility of discovery hovered. What if she found out the USB was missing the morning of the wedding? What if she planted something in my son's ear that made him cancel the show before it played? Every scenario played like a short film in my head. I rehearsed how I'd handle each one. I practiced my face, the calm, disappointed mother that would look so believable when the truth hit. I practiced the words I'd say if he turned on me in front of everyone. What would you do in my shoes? Would you risk everything on one public moment, or would you try to save him privately and hope it worked? That question sat heavy in my chest as the final day approached, heavier than my fear. I had to decide. Walk away and live with the slow defeat of losing my family's legacy, or press play and watch the truth burn. I chose the burn. The morning of the wedding felt like walking into a storm I'd raised myself. I woke before dawn, the house quiet like it was holding its breath. The sun hadn't even decided to come up, and there I was, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, the recipe box open like a secret safe, and the USB heavy in my hand. My hands shook, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to do. For a second, one stupid human second, I imagined waking my son up, hugging him, telling him to run. But love doesn't work like that when it's already rooted in someone's bones. He wouldn't run. He'd stand with her, and I'd lose everything. I checked the drives for the 10th time. The tech guy had sent me a thumbs up last night. He'd be at the venue early, he promised. I sent the swear to him message again. Don't screw this up. He replied with a single emoji and a time. That was enough. I printed out copies of the most damning texts and tucked them into an envelope labeled for emergency use. I put a spare copy of the presentation in my purse, hidden behind makeup and a folded napkin. Old habits die hard. Mothers always prepare for the worst. Then came the hardest part, facing my son. He was oblivious to my sleepless night, bright-eyed and nervous, talking about vows and which tie to wear. I watched him from the doorway, and my heart split in two, half mother, half soldier. I told myself I'd give him the morning of peace. No push, no warnings. He needed to be his joyful, stupid, in-love self so everyone would believe him when the truth hit. I hugged him tight, smelled the cologne he'd used since he was a teenager, and for a moment I was back at his first day of school, tying his shoelaces. Do you ever wish you could freeze those moments? I did. But life doesn't freeze. It moves forward, and sometimes it takes you to the edge if you don't grab the wheel. At the same time, the ex-boyfriend called me. I hadn't expected him to reach out again, but there he was, voice low, saying he couldn't stand thinking about what she'd do next. He wanted to help. He said he had bank statements and a confession from a friend of hers who'd been involved in setting up fake accounts. I felt a flicker of gratefulness, then sadness. Grateful because I needed every piece. Sad because it shouldn't have taken another man getting hurt for my family to be safe. He drove over with a wad of papers, eyes red, hands trembling. He wouldn't come into the house. He handed the documents over the porch like an exchange of contraband. I slid them into my folder with trembling fingers and felt the case grow heavier. More proof, more certainty. Even with that, doubt nibbled at my heels. What if my son's friends believed his bride? What if a lawyer stepped in and buried my evidence? What if the tech guy failed? All the what-ifs created static in my brain. But every time doubt bloomed, I played the recordings in my head, her voice laughing as she talked about locking it down. That laugh was my North Star. It guided me. Before leaving for the venue, I walked through the rooms, touching the things my family had built. Old ledgers, a faded photo of my late husband standing proud in the factory, the plaque with our name engraved. Each object felt fragile, like glass that could shatter under the wrong foot. I whispered to them like a promise. I will not let them take this. I will not let them erase what we earned. On the drive to the venue, my phone buzzed. A cousin texted asking if everything was okay because he'd heard rumors. I typed back a calm, controlled reply. All good. See you soon. Lies of omission can be a weapon too. I parked, walked into that hall where silk and flowers and fake smiles had been arranged to celebrate a union built on lies, and my stomach flipped like I'd swallowed the last piece of the puzzle. I reminded myself one last time. This is for him, and for everyone he can't see yet. As I took my place among the guests, I felt the USB like a hot coal against my palm. The lights dimmed, the music swelled, and she appeared. Glowing, perfect, confident. The whole room exhaled love. I inhaled resolve. The moment was closer than my heartbeat. When she walked down that aisle, the whole room melted for her. Gasps of admiration, little sighs, even whispers of, "She's beautiful, they're perfect together." I sat there stiff as a stone, my hands clenched in my lap, nails biting into my skin. She wasn't beautiful to me. She was poison, dressed in lace. But to everyone else, she was a dream. And my son, standing there with his face lit up, looked like he had just been handed the world. That image almost broke me. Almost. Because deep down, I knew what was coming. And once it did, that dream of his would shatter into pieces so sharp he could never put them back together. During the vows, my chest tightened so badly I thought I might faint. She spoke sweetly, her voice trembling at all the right places, eyes glistening with fake tears. Every word she said, forever, honor, love, was like poison dripping into my son's ears. And he swallowed it like wine, smiling, nodding, believing every drop. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout, "She's lying to you!" But I didn't. Timing was everything. The moment wasn't mine yet. The priest asked if anyone had objections. My furt slammed into my ribs. My throat burned with the urge to say, "Yes, I object. She's a fraud." But that wasn't my plan. That wasn't enough. She could argue. She could twist words. No, I needed evidence, undeniable and public, so not even the sharpest tongue could wiggle free. So I bit my lip and stayed silent. Even as my hands shook so hard, the program rattled like paper in the wind. After the vows, while the guests were ushered toward the reception hall, I slipped away. My heels clicked on the polished floor. each step like a countdown to war. I found my tech guy behind the screen, already setting up, his face serious. He gave me a small nod. The USB was in, the presentation was cued. All it would take was a signal, and everything would explode. I stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, the band tuning up. My son's voice echoed faintly from the other side of the wall, laughing with friends, completely unaware of the avalanche about to bury his bride. My stomach twisted. For a split second, guilt clawed at me. Was I about to destroy my son's wedding? Was I about to humiliate him in front of everyone he loved? The answer was yes, but the alternative was worse. If I didn't act, he'd be destroyed anyway, slowly, silently, until nothing was left of him or the legacy we built. The reception began, full of smiles and music. Toasts were made, laughter flowed. I watched her glide around the room like a queen, soaking in admiration, kissing my son as if she owned him already. Her eyes kept darting to me, though, sharp and calculating. She knew I was watching, but she didn't know how close she was to the cliff's edge.
Finally, the moment came. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up. Everyone clapped, expecting a sweet slideshow of childhood photos, maybe funny videos, the usual wedding entertainment. She leaned into my son, resting her head on his shoulder, that smug little smile tugging at her lips. She thought the show was about her. She thought she was untouchable. I raised my hand, gave the signal, and the first slide appeared. Not baby photos, not family memories. A screenshot, a message. Her own words on the screen. Men are so easy. Once you marry them, you own everything. The room went dead silent. Her smile froze. My son blinked, confused. The whispers started. Soft at first, then louder as the next screenshot appeared, and the next, and the next. Her perfect world was cracking right in front of everyone's eyes. The next slide hit the screen before anyone could even process the first. A picture of her, arms around that ex-boyfriend, time-stamped just months ago. Not ancient history, not before my son. This was during the engagement. Gasps tore through the room like a storm. My son's face fell, his jaw slack, eyes locked on the image like it was burning a hole in him. The guests were restless now, heads turning, hands covering mouths, whispers buzzing like bees. The silence had shattered. The third slide flicked on, a string of text between her and the ex. Her words lit up the screen in black and white. Don't worry, babe. Once I marry him, the money is ours. We'll be set for life. Just play along until the wedding. The crowd erupted. People shouted. Some cursed under their breath. Someone even dropped their glass, the sharp crash echoing louder than the music that had died mid-note. My son's best friend stood up, glaring at her like he wanted to drag her out right then and there. And her? She went pale, then red, then pale again. She shot up from her seat, hissing under her breath, "Turn it off! Turn it off now!" She rushed toward the projector, but I was already there, standing between her and the screen. My voice rang out clear. No. Everyone deserves to see the truth tonight. Another slide. Bank account transfers. Money she'd been siphoning from my son already, little by little, hidden under fake expenses. Screenshots of her bragging to a friend about how stupid he was, how easy it was to manage him, how she was going to own the business one day. Her words, her face, undeniable. My son staggered to his feet, his breathing ragged. He said, "Tell me this isn't true," he whispered to her, voice cracking like a broken child's. He wasn't angry yet. He was pleading, desperate for her to deny it, to save him from the heartbreak. But she didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she broke down screaming, trying to spin it. "It's not what it looks like. I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. You know how people talk. It was nothing serious." But the evidence kept rolling. Her voice recordings, oh yes, I had those too, played over the speakers. Her laughing, bragging, mocking him, mocking me, even mocking the family name. The sound of her voice filled the room, and the look on her face as she heard herself exposed, priceless. By now, half the guests were filming. Phones up everywhere. She knew her reputation wasn't just dead here. It was going to spread like wildfire outside those walls. No escape, no spin, no saving face. My son finally snapped. His hands trembled, his voice cracked, but his words were firm. "Get out. Get out of my sight." She lunged for him, tears streaking down his face, grabbing his arm. "Please, baby, please, it's you I love. It's always been you." He shoved her hand off like it burned him. And when he turned to me, his eyes were bloodshot, wet, full of a pain no mother ever wants to see. "Mom, how long have you known?" My throat tightened. My answer would either break him further or show him that I had always been fighting for him. His question hung heavy in the air, cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Mom? How long have you known?" His voice was trembling not just from anger, but from heartbreak, confusion, disbelief. My heart cracked at the sound. That's the kind of pain a mother never wants to hear in her child's voice. But I couldn't lie. Not here, not now. I stepped closer, steady, even though inside my knees were shaking. My voice was low, but it carried across the stunned silence of the room. "Long enough, son. Long enough to know she never loved you. Long enough to see the trap she set for our family, and long enough to make sure I had the proof to save you." He shook his head, his whole body trembling, as if the ground beneath him had split open. You knew and you didn't tell me? You let me stand here in front of everyone, about to marry her.
The words cut me, but I stood firm. I told you. I tried. Over and over. You didn't want to believe me. You chose her words over mine. What else could I do? If I spoke without evidence, she would have twisted it, painted me as the jealous mother trying to ruin your happiness, and you would have pushed me away. So, I gathered proof, piece by piece, to make sure you'd see her for who she really is. His face crumpled, torn between anger and gratitude, between humiliation and relief. He pressed his hands against his face, dragging them down like he was trying to wipe away the whole nightmare. When he lowered them, tears streaked his cheeks. He looked younger in that moment, like the little boy I once held in my arms after his first heartbreak at school. And I realized this was worse. This wasn't puppy love. This was betrayal on a scale that could have destroyed him. Meanwhile, she was still on the floor, begging, sobbing, crawling closer. "Please, it's all lies. I was just angry when I wrote those things. I didn't mean it. I love you. I love you more than anything. You have to believe me." Her voice was shrill, desperate, breaking. But nobody moved to help her. Not a single guest. Her bridesmaids stood frozen, faces pale, refusing to meet her eyes. My son's best friend shook his head in disgust. Even her own family sat in silence, some of them covering their faces in shame. She was alone now, exposed,
stripped bare in front of everyone she tried to fool. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. People were angry. Some cursed her under their breath. Others looked at my son with pity, with sympathy, and others glared at me, as if unsure whether to blame me for choosing this moment. I could feel their eyes boring into me, but I didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about my son's future. I put a hand on his shoulder. He flinched at first, then let it rest there. His voice cracked as he asked me, "Why me, Mom? Why would she do this to me?" I swallowed hard. "Because you're good. Because you're kind. Because you trusted her. And people like her, they prey on that. They see kindness as weakness. But son, it's not weakness. It's who you are. Don't let her steal that from you. Don't let her win." He stared at me, searching my face for something. Strength, truth, maybe even absolution. Then slowly, he nodded, wiping his tears, straightening his shoulders. He looked at her one last time, and with a voice cold enough to silence the room, he said, "You're nothing to me. Leave. Now."
She screamed, a raw, furious sound that echoed off the walls. She grabbed at the hem of her gown, stumbling to her feet, pointing at me with shaking hands. "This is your fault! You ruined me! You witch! You'll pay for this!" 2 security guards, summoned by the chaos, stepped in. They didn't even wait for my signal. They grabbed her arms and started dragging her out as she kicked and screamed, cursing my name, vowing revenge of her own. And just like that, the wedding was over. But the real fallout, that was only just beginning. The moment those security guards dragged her out, the entire hall exploded into noise. Guests whispering, some gasping, others openly talking like they were already at a gossip table. Phones were out, screens glowing everywhere. People weren't just watching, they were recording, streaming, sharing. I knew right then that this wasn't staying inside these walls. By the morning, the whole city would know. By the end of the week, it'd be everywhere. My son stood frozen at the center of it all, still in his wedding suit, but stripped of everything that moment should have been. The spotlight wasn't on love anymore. It was on betrayal. He looked like a man who had just lost his footing on the edge of a cliff, one push away from falling. My chest ached for him, but I also knew this had to happen. Better now, in the brutal light of truth, than later, in the slow, suffocating crawl of her lies. People started approaching me, some with sympathy, some with judgment. One of our longtime business partners leaned in and muttered, "Smart move, ma'am. Better to cut the poison early." Another guest, a cousin of hers, spat out, "You could have done this privately. You humiliated her." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "She humiliated herself." Meanwhile, across the room, groups were buzzing, some shaking their heads, whispering about the screenshots. Others were already scrolling their feeds, chuckling darkly. "It's up already. The whole clip. She's done for." And they were right. The video spread like wildfire. Her face on the screen, her voice laughing about my son, mocking the family, bragging about the money. It was too perfect, too damning. You couldn't spin that. By the time she stumbled out of the hall, her reputation was already ashes. But my son wasn't celebrating. He stood in the corner, his hands buried in his hair, tears streaking down his face. I walked to him slowly, carefully, the way you walk toward a wounded animal that doesn't know if you're friend or foe. He didn't look up when I reached him. He just whispered, broken, "Mom, how could I not see it? How could I have been so stupid?" That hit me harder than any insult that night. I pulled him into my arms, holding him like I used to when he was small. "You're not stupid," I whispered into his hair. "You loved her. You trusted her. That's not stupidity. That's humanity. The mistake was hers, not yours." He sobbed against my shoulder,
shaking like he was trying to cry all the poison out of his system. Around us, the party was dead. Guests were leaving, muttering, avoiding eye contact. The music had long since stopped. The hall felt like a battlefield after the smoke cleared. Tables overturned, glasses shattered, decorations hanging limp, laughter gone. And yet, even in that wreckage, there was a strange relief settling in my chest. It was over. She was exposed. My son was hurt, yes, but he was free. Still, I knew this wasn't the end, because exposure in a room was one thing. Exposure on the internet, that was something else entirely. And as I scrolled my phone that night, seeing her name trending, seeing clip after clip of her lies spreading faster than wildfire, I realized the revenge I thought ended at that wedding was only just beginning to burn her world down. In the days that followed, her world crumbled faster than even I had imagined. By the next morning, every gossip page, every social feed was flooded with clips of the wedding disaster. Headlines screamed her name. Bride exposed at altar. Gold digger humiliated on big day. The internet never lets go of stories like that. It chews them up and spits them out over and over again. And this one? This was viral poison. She tried to fight back at first, posting teary videos, claiming it was all lies, that I had framed her, that she was the victim of some jealous mother who couldn't let go. But the receipts were too strong. Screenshots, bank records, recordings. Truth doesn't need to scream, it just needs to be shown. And people weren't buying her excuses. They tore her apart in the comments. Even the friends who once clung to her side quietly unfollowed, blocked, erased any connection. Her phone calls to my son went unanswered, messages left unread. I heard through whispers that her own family turned their backs on her too. Her father refused to even see her, ashamed of what she'd done, embarrassed by the stains she left on their name. Jobs she'd been lined up for pulled their offers. The apartment she rented was gone within a month. She couldn't afford it anymore. Piece by piece, her carefully constructed image of a perfect life fell apart. And my son, he didn't bounce back overnight. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't some fairy tale ending where he suddenly smiled and everything was fine. No, for weeks he barely left his room. He avoided calls, avoided people. I'd hear him pacing the floor at night. The sound of his grief was too heavy for him to carry quietly. He was broken, but he was healing. Slowly, painfully, but he was healing. Sometimes he'd ask me, late at night, "Mom, did I really mean nothing to her? Was it all fake?" And I'd look him in the eye and tell him the truth. Yes, it was fake, but your love wasn't. And that's what matters. Don't let her take that part of you. Don't let her steal the good in you.
And I think, deep down, he started to believe me. He started working again, started rebuilding his life piece by piece. And every time I saw a little bit of his old light come back, I knew I had done the right thing, even if it meant shattering him that night. As for me, I don't regret it. Not one bit. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about saving someone else, even if it breaks their heart in the process. My son would have lost everything, his future, his happiness, our family legacy, if she had succeeded. But instead, the truth came out, and she lost everything she tried to steal. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes late at night, I replay her face in my mind. The way her smile cracked when the first slide hit that screen, the panic in her eyes, the desperation in her voice when she realized her lies couldn't save her anymore. That image, it reminds me that justice, no matter how painful, is worth it. So if you ask me if I'd do it again, in a heartbeat. What about you? Be honest. If you were in my shoes, would you have let the wedding go on to keep the peace, or would you have blown it all up like I did? Because I'll tell you this, sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to set fire to the lie, no matter who gets burned in the process.